The sand hissed beneath the Lessa's scaled fingers, each pull forward leaving serpentine tracks that the wind quickly erased. 300 years of crawling, and still the desert felt like it was consuming her inch by inch. Her lower body, useless since the purge, dragged behind her, wrapped in salvaged metal and patches of composite fabric. "Almost there, Ilari," she whispered to the small bundle secured to her back. "Just beyond that ridge I feel something." The infant sister made no sound. She rarely did. Born from the last viable genetic material of their species, material the Lessa had guarded for centuries. Little Ilari was barely 2 months old, a miracle child engineered from preserved tissue and grown in a makeshift incubator the Lessa had assembled from the wreckage of their people's last sanctuary. The Lessa's arms trembled as she pulled herself up another dune. The exoskeletal braces that once supported her torso had failed days ago, their power cells finally depleted after decades of use. Without them, her body weight crushed her lungs, making each breath a labor. The twin sons of Moros 9 beat down mercilessly. Once, this world had been a garden, before the hegemony sterilized it from orbit. Now it was just another graveyard, one of dozens where her people had been systematically exterminated. At the crest of the dune, the Lessa collapsed, rolling to protect Ilari from the impact. The bundle squirmed slightly, a good sign. Through cracked eyes, she gazed at the horizon and saw it, a ship. Not the sleek predatory shapes of hegemony vessels, but something bulkier, utilitarian, human-made. Humans, they had arrived in this sector too late to save her people, but early enough to carve out their own frontier among the stars. They were scavengers, opportunists, and possibly her last hope. The Lessa forced herself upright, her seven-fingered hand reaching for the small signaling device wired into what remained of her ceremonial headdress. One pulse left, one chance. She activated it. Maddox Rendell wiped engine grease from his brow, leaving a dark smudge across his weathered face. At 43, he'd spent more than half his life repairing ships on the frontier, making a modest living by keeping colony vessels and freight haulers operational where manufacturer support was non-existent. "Cora, how's that fuel cell diagnostic coming?" he called toward the ship's belly. His first mate's voice crackled through the comms. "Nearly there. This salvage better be worth the detour, Maddox. We're burning valuable fuel." "The signal's pre-hegemony tech," he replied, scanning the dunes with high-powered binoculars. "Could be valuable, could be," he stopped abruptly, adjusting the focus. "Wait, I've got movement about half a click east." "Probably just another scavenger drone," Cora sighed. "This sector's been picked clean for decades." But Maddox had already begun trudging through the sand, his curiosity piqued. After 20 years on the frontier, he'd developed an instinct for the unusual, the valuable, the overlooked. What he found exceeded all expectations. At first, the silhouette appeared to be some strange desert creature, until he made out the unmistakable shape of a sentient being. Her upper body was distinctly humanoid, though clearly alien, scaled skin in faded blues and purples, a ridge-like crest running from her forehead back along her skull, seven-fingered hands with translucent webbing between them. But where legs should have been, there was only a withered, twisted mass of tissue partially encased in ancient technology. And strapped to her back, impossibly, was a tiny bundle that moved. Maddox approached slowly, hand hovering near his sidearm out of habit, though something told him this creature posed no threat. "Can you understand me?" he asked, kneeling in the sand several meters away. The alien woman's eyes, four of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked rapidly. Her mouth, a vertical slit with delicate ridges instead of lips, opened and closed several times before sound emerged. "Help, sister," she rasped in heavily accented standard. "Help us." Despite the blistering heat, Maddox felt a chill run down his spine. The translator implant behind his ear couldn't identify her language family, which meant she likely belonged to a species thought extinct. Making his decision, he activated his comms. "Cora, prep the med bay, and call Ilora, tell her we need her xenobiology expertise. We've got survivors." As he carefully lifted the alien woman, marveling at how light she felt despite her size, her hand gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "My name, the Lessa," she whispered. "She is, Ilari, last of us." "I'm Maddox," he replied, carrying her toward the ship. "And you're not alone anymore." The med bay aboard Maddox's ship, the Wayfinder, was never meant for xenobiology. Its sterile white surfaces and human-calibrated equipment looked almost primitive beside the Lessa's ancient, yet somehow more advanced, cybernetic attachments. "I've never seen integration like this," whispered Ilora, the ship's medic. Her dark eyes widened as she gently removed the makeshift casing around the Lessa's lower body. "These neural connectors, they're practically fused with her spine, and they're still partially functional after centuries." Maddox hovered nearby, watching the sleeping alien. They'd sedated her for the examination, but only after she'd reluctantly allowed them to place infant Alari in a nutrient bath designed for premature human colonists. The baby alien floated peacefully, her tiny second eyelids occasionally fluttering. "Can you help her?" Maddox asked, unable to explain the strange protectiveness he felt. Something about the Lessa's determination, crawling across a wasteland for what must have been weeks, had stirred something within him. Ilora wiped sweat from her brow. "Maybe. These are supposed to be mobility enhancers, but they're deteriorated beyond repair. I'd need to fabricate something new, something compatible with both her physiology and what remains of her original tech." "Whatever you need, make it happen," Maddox said, moving closer to examine the intricate scrollwork etched into the metal components fused to the Lessa's spine. They weren't just functional, they were beautiful, telling stories in a language long forgotten. 3 days later, the Lessa awoke to find herself suspended in a biomedical cradle, various tubes and sensors attached to her upper body. Her eyes darted around frantically until they found Alari, safely contained in a transparent incubation chamber across the room. "She's thriving," came a voice from the doorway. Maddox entered, carrying what appeared to be a complex framework of metal and synthetic tissue. "Your sister's vitals are stronger than when we found you." The Lessa's vertical mouth quivered. "You help us, why?" Maddox set down his creation and pulled up a stool beside her. "Because you needed it, and because I've spent my life fixing broken things." "I am not broken," she rasped, a flash of indignation coloring her words. "I am Survivor." A smile spread across Maddox's face. "Clearly, 3 centuries if what you told me in the desert was accurate, which makes you the oldest living person I've ever met." For the first time, something resembling a smile formed on the Lessa's alien features. "Old, yes, very old." Her gaze shifted to the framework he'd brought. "What is this?" "Your new legs, or, well, not legs exactly, more like a mobility platform that will integrate with your existing neural pathways. Ilora figured out how to interface our tech with yours." He hesitated. "If you'll let us try." The Lessa's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Maddox would later learn signified deep contemplation. "Why help creatures you do not know?" Maddox's expression grew serious. "Out here on the frontier, we all have stories, the Lessa. Mine began when everyone told me to leave someone behind." He glanced away. "I listened to them then. I've spent 20 years making sure I never make that mistake again." Over the next week, as Ilora and Maddox worked to integrate the new mobility system with the Lessa's body, an unexpected bond began to form. During the painful neural calibration sessions, Maddox would distract her with stories of his journeys across the frontier. In return, the Lessa began sharing fragments of her centuries-long odyssey. "My people were the Veskari," she explained one evening as Maddox adjusted a connection at the base of her spine, his fingers brushing against her scaled skin with surprising gentleness. "We were keepers of knowledge, architects of great machines." "What happened to them?" Maddox asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Hegemony decided our knowledge was dangerous, our independence problematic. They came with world killers, destroyed everything." Her voice hardened. "I survived because I was away researching in deep caverns. My legs, crushed in collapse, found ancient mobility tech in ruins, adapted it, survived." Maddox's hand lingered on her shoulder. "And your sister?" The Lessa's eyes dimmed slightly. "Not sister by birth, sister by blood, last viable genetic material of Veskari preserved in ancient vault. I found stasis chamber with embryonic cells. Carried them for centuries, waiting for safe place technology to bring new life." "You gave birth to her?" Maddox asked, amazed. "Created her," the Lessa corrected. "Last month found abandoned medical facility, used remaining power to complete gestation process." Her hand reached toward the incubation chamber where Alari slept. "She is future, I am past." That night, as Maddox made final adjustments to the mobility unit, he found himself working with unusual care, double-checking every connection. When his hand accidentally brushed against the sensitive area where metal met flesh, the Lessa didn't flinch away. Instead, her 7 fingers cautiously covered his. "Human hands," she murmured, "so strange, so warm." Their eyes met 4-2, and something unspoken passed between them, something neither of them had words for yet. The next morning, with the ship hovering in Moros 9's upper atmosphere, the Lessa took her first steps in 3 centuries. The mobility platform hummed with energy as she rose from the medical cradle, her upper body now supported by an elegant exoskeletal frame that enhanced rather than constrained her natural movement. "How does it feel?" Maddox asked, standing ready to catch her if the system failed. The Lessa moved forward, each step smoother than the last as the neural interface adapted to her intentions. She moved toward Ilari's chamber, placed her hand against the transparent surface, then turned to Maddox with all four eyes glistening. "It feels," she said simply, "like beginning again." The Wayfinder slipped into hyperspace with a subtle shudder, leaving the barren wasteland of Moros 9 behind. In the ship's modest galley, the Lessa sat with surprising grace, her new mobility platform allowing her to sit upright at the table for the first time in centuries. Cradled in one arm was Ilari, who made soft clicking sounds as she fed from a nutrient solution Ilora had synthesized. "The little one's getting stronger," observed Cora, Maddox's first mate. Unlike her captain, Cora maintained a cautious distance from their unusual passengers. "Any idea where we're taking them?" Maddox looked up from the nav charts displayed on the table's surface. "Outpost Helios has a decent xenobiology department. They might help us better understand their physiology." "And after that," Cora pressed, "we can't exactly add them to the crew roster." Before Maddox could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared. All eyes turned to the central monitor as a sleek black vessel materialized in their wake, its configuration unlike anything in Maddox's considerable experience. "That's not hegemony," he muttered, rushing to the bridge with Cora close behind. At the mention of hegemony, the Lessa's entire body had tensed. She secured Ilari in the makeshift sling Ilora had fashioned and followed them, her new mobility platform whirring softly with each swift movement. On the bridge, displays flickered with interference as the unknown vessel gained on them. "They're scanning us," Cora reported, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Deep scan penetrating all our shielding." The Lessa moved to Maddox's side, her voice urgent. "They have found me." "Who?" Maddox demanded, but before she could answer, the comms system activated by itself, projecting a holographic image into the center of the bridge. The figure that appeared was humanoid but clearly artificial, a body of gleaming black metal with circuitry pulsing beneath translucent panels. Its face was featureless except for a cluster of optical sensors arranged in a pattern that mockingly resembled the Lessa's four-eyed configuration. "Designation, the Lessa of the Vescari Knowledge Guild," the entity said, its voice an unsettling harmony of mechanical tones. "Our sensors detect you have finally activated the genetic sequence. Surrender the child and yourself for processing." Maddox stepped forward. "This is Captain Maddox Rendell of the independent vessel Wayfinder. Who the hell are you and what do you want with my passengers?" The entity's head tilted slightly. "Irrelevant query. Human interference is not sanctioned in this retrieval. The Vescari female carries valuable data in her genetic structure, data that belongs to Void Corp." "Void Corp," Cora whispered. "I thought they were just frontier legends." "No legend," the Lessa hissed, clutching Ilari closer. "Cybernetic collective, they supplied hegemony with weapons. After my people fell, they salvaged our ruins but could not access our deepest knowledge." The entity continued. "The Vescari encoded their weapons schematics and defense systems into their genetic structure. The female the Lessa is the last living database. The infant is the key to decryption. They will be harvested." "Like hell they will," Maddox growled, cutting the transmission. He turned to Cora. "Evasive maneuvers, take us into the Carillion Nebula, the radiation should disrupt their sensors." As the Wayfinder lurched into a desperate escape pattern, Maddox turned to the Lessa. "You have some explaining to do." Hours later, safely hidden within the nebula's swirling gases, the Lessa sat in Maddox's quarters, Ilari sleeping peacefully in a makeshift crib nearby. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows across the Lessa's alien features. "My people foresaw their end," she explained, her vertical mouth tight with old grief. "They knew hegemony would come for our technology, so they hid it in the one place hegemony would not think to look, within us." "Your DNA," Maddox said, understanding dawning. "You're carrying the blueprint for weapons powerful enough to worry the hegemony." The Lessa nodded. "Not just weapons, knowledge, culture, history, each Vescari carried different segments. When we gathered in ritual circles, our collective genetic memory could be accessed." Her four eyes lowered. "I am last vessel, but incomplete, without others, knowledge fragmented." "And Ilari?" Maddox asked. "She is different, created from preserved cells of our highest knowledge keepers. She carries Master Key, the ability to access all genetic memories without circle ritual." The Lessa's hand gently stroked the sleeping infant's head. "Void Corp hunted me for centuries, but I was useless to them alone. Now with Ilari." Maddox moved to sit beside her on the narrow bunk. The closeness felt natural now, after weeks of working together on her mobility platform. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, no accusation in his voice. "Fear," she admitted. "Always for 300 years fear. Everyone who helped me died. Everyone who knew what I carried became target." Without thinking, Maddox reached out, his 5 fingers intertwining with her 7 in an awkward but somehow perfect fit. I'm not that easy to kill. The Lessa looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. The gesture was intimate beyond words for her species. Physical touch outside of ritual circles had been rare among the Vescari, yet with Maddox it felt right. These hands, she said softly, rebuilt me, gave me movement again. Her free hand reached up to touch his face, scaled fingertips tracing the contours of his very human features. I cannot ask you to die for us. Maddox leaned into her touch. You're not asking, I'm offering. The moment hung between them, charged with something neither had expected to find in the vast emptiness of space: connection. When their foreheads touched, it was the most natural thing in the world. In the crib, Alari stirred, making a soft trilling sound that broke the spell. We need a plan, Maddox said, reluctantly pulling back. Somewhere to go where Void Corp can't follow. The Lessa's eyes brightened suddenly. There is one place, ancient Vescari outpost hidden in asteroid field, coordinates encoded in my memory, accessible now through your technology interface. How long have you known about this outpost? Always, she replied, but alone, crippled with no ship, it was impossible dream. Maddox stood newfound determination in his stance. Well, now you've got me, a working set of legs and a ship. I'd say it's time we turned that dream into our destination. Outside the viewport, the nebula swirled in brilliant purples and blues, temporarily hiding them from their pursuers. But both knew the protection wouldn't last forever. The hunt had begun in earnest. The asteroid field surrounding the hidden Vescari outpost was a navigational nightmare, precisely as its creators had intended. Massive rocks tumbled in chaotic patterns, some equipped with ancient defense systems that still activated at the approach of unrecognized vessels. A little to port, the Lessa called, her 4 eyes tracking multiple sensor readings simultaneously. The neural interface Maddox had designed allowed her to connect directly with the ship's systems, interpreting the Vescari defense grid in ways the human crew couldn't. There, that passage widens every 47 seconds. Maddox's hands danced across the controls, guiding the Wayfinder through an opening that seemed impossibly narrow. The ship shuddered as an asteroid scraped along their starboard shield. This better be worth it, Cora muttered from the secondary pilot position. The past week had been a constant game of cat and mouse with the Void Corp vessel, which had proven disturbingly persistent. It is there, the Lessa said, her voice hushed with emotion as they cleared the densest part of the field. Sanctuary. Embedded in a massive asteroid was a structure that defied human architecture, organic curves melded with crystalline spires, all built from a material that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Despite being centuries abandoned, it showed no signs of deterioration. Vescari construction, the Lessa explained, pride evident in her voice. Living metal, self-repairing. As the Wayfinder docked in a bay that reconfigured itself to accommodate the unfamiliar vessel, Maddox couldn't help but steal glances at the Lessa. In the 3 weeks since fitting her with the mobility platform, he'd watched her transform. No longer the desperate creature crawling through sand, she moved with increasing confidence, her natural dignity restored. The more her strength returned, the more he found himself drawn to her, not out of pity but genuine admiration. And something more. Inside the outpost, dormant systems reactivated at the Lessa's presence. Lights bloomed along organic-looking corridors, and atmospheric processors hummed to life, adjusting the air mixture to accommodate both Vescari and human physiology. It recognizes you, Maddox observed as they moved deeper into the facility, Alari secured in a sling across the Lessa's chest. Genetic identification, she confirmed. Outpost knows it's Vescari. They found the command center, a circular chamber with what appeared to be living consoles that responded to the Lessa's touch. As her 7-fingered hands danced across the surfaces, displays illuminated with information incomprehensible to human eyes. We are safe here, she announced. Defense grid fully operational, Void Corp cannot approach without detection. For the first time in weeks, the crew of the Wayfinder allowed themselves to relax. Ilora established a makeshift medical facility in what appeared to be the outpost's equivalent. Cora begrudgingly admired the advanced navigation systems, and Maddox watched the Lessa come alive amidst the remnants of her civilization. That evening, after the others had retired to quarters the outpost had somehow reconfigured for human comfort, Maddox found the Lessa in a small chamber filled with what appeared to be 3-dimensional records, holographic histories of the Vescari. Your people were beautiful, he said, watching images of tall, elegant beings engaged in what appeared to be a complex ritual dance. The Lessa turned to him, the blue-purple scales of her face catching the light from the displays. We were not warriors, not conquerors, only keepers of knowledge. That's what made you dangerous, Maddox realized. You couldn't be controlled. She nodded, then gestured to a small alcove where Ilari slept peacefully in a cradle of living metal that pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Here, she will grow strong, learn to access the memories she carries. And you, what will you do now that you've found sanctuary? The Lessa's mobility platform hummed softly as she moved closer to him. In the weeks aboard the Wayfinder, Maddox had modified and refined it, incorporating salvaged Vescari technology from her original apparatus. Now it moved as an extension of her, elegant and strong. For 3 centuries, I had only one purpose, survival, she said, her vertical mouth forming the closest approximation of a human smile. Now I find myself wanting. Wanting what? Maddox asked, though something in his quickening pulse suggested he already knew. Her 7-fingered hand reached for his face, tracing the contours she had come to find so fascinating. To know what it means to live again, not just survive. The kiss that followed was neither human nor Vescari, but something new, a bridge between species, between souls who had found each other across the impossible distances of both space and life experience. Her mouth was different from a human woman's, but the warmth, the connection, the sudden rightness of it transcended physical form. Later, in quarters that the living station had reconfigured to accommodate them both, they discovered that while their bodies were different, desire spoke a universal language. Vescari intimacy involved the joining of neural pathways as much as physical touch, something made possible by the interface Maddox had created. As their minds brushed against each other, Maddox glimpsed fragments of her centuries of solitude, the crushing weight of responsibility, the fear that had been her constant companion. And the Lessa, in turn, felt his loneliness among the stars, his need to fix broken things stemming from his inability to repair his own fractured past. In the aftermath, as they lay intertwined in the soft, responsive bedding, Maddox traced patterns on her scaled skin. I never expected to find something like this out here. Nor I, she admitted. For my people, such connection was rare. We were solitary by nature, but perhaps 300 years of solitude changes nature. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only when a distant alarm pulsed through the outpost. Maddox was on his feet instantly. What is that? The Lessa's 4 eyes widened in sequence fear. Perimeter alert, something has penetrated the outer asteroid field. They rushed to the command center where Cora was already monitoring the defenses. 3 vessels, she reported grimly, Void Corp signatures. How did they find us? Ilora demanded, joining them with sleep still clouding her eyes. The Lessa moved to the main console, interfacing directly with the outpost systems. They followed genetic trace. My fault, I accessed too many systems, left detectable energy signature. Maddox studied the tactical display. The defenses will hold them off, right? For time, yes, the Lessa confirmed. But they will breach eventually. Void Corp adaptation is efficient. The weight of decision settled heavily on Maddox's shoulders. We need to evacuate, get back to the Wayfinder. But the Lessa remained still, her posture suddenly resolute. No, you go take Ilari, I will remain. That's not happening, Maddox said flatly. It must, her voice carried centuries of determination. Outpost has self-destruct protocol, can be activated from within command center, will destroy Void Corp vessels in blast radius. Maddox grasped her shoulders, and you with it. No, we find another way. There is no other way, she said gently. Ilari carries future of my people. I am past walking history. If Void Corp captures us both, they gain weapons that could enslave galaxies. Her scaled hand pressed against his chest. I have lived 3 centuries, found purpose, found love, it is enough. It's not enough for me, Maddox growled, pulling her into an embrace that defied their physical differences. Around them, the outpost trembled as the first Void Corp weapons impacted the outer defenses. The Lessa pulled back, all 4 eyes fixed on his. Always I crawled to survive, now I stand to protect. She placed her hand on his face one last time. Take my sister, tell her our stories, that is how Vescari live forever. Before Maddox could protest further, she interfaced directly with the command console. The outpost hummed with energy as automatic protocols engaged, sealing off sections and initiating evacuation sequences. Go, she said, not looking back as her fingers danced across the living metal. Countdown begins when you clear asteroid field. Cora pulled at Maddox's arm. Captain, we have to move now. With a wounded sound that seemed torn from his soul, Maddox allowed himself to be dragged away, but not before catching the Lessa's final words. Find me in the stars, Maddox, some ends are just beginnings. The Wayfinder burst from the asteroid field with the fury of a comet, its engines straining beyond safe parameters. In the cockpit, Maddox's face was a mask of grim determination as he pushed the ship harder than he ever had before. "We'll clear the blast radius in 20 seconds, Cora reported, her voice tight with tension. In Maddox's lap, Ilari made distressed clicking sounds, as if somehow sensing the sacrifice being made for her safety. The infant's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, all focused on the viewport and the asteroid field behind them. "Captain," Ilora called from the sensor station, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the outpost. It's not just a self-destruct sequence." Before Maddox could respond, the comms system activated, displaying a holographic message. The Lessa's image materialized between them, her features composed despite the chaos visible behind her. "If you are seeing this, you have cleared the danger zone," her recording said. "What follows is not an ending but transformation." On the tactical display, the 3 Void Corp vessels had breached the outpost's outer defenses and were converging on the central structure. "For centuries, I carried not just genetic memory but final protocol," the Lessa's hologram continued. "Vescary failsafe, if all else lost, knowledge returns to stars." A blinding light erupted from the center of the asteroid field, not the destructive explosion they had expected, but a coherent beam of energy that spread outward in a spherical wave. As it washed over the Void Corp vessels, their systems failed instantly, leaving them drifting and powerless. "Return for me," the Lessa's voice commanded as her hologram flickered. "What was broken will be remade." The message ended, leaving the crew staring at each other in confusion. "Turn the ship around," Maddox ordered, not caring if it made sense, not caring about anything except the impossible hope blooming in his chest. When they re-entered the asteroid field, they found the outpost transformed. The living metal had reconfigured itself into a new shape, more concentrated, more purposeful, and at its center, suspended in a column of light, was the Lessa. Or rather, what the Lessa was becoming. Her body had merged with the outpost systems, the living metal flowing around and through her. Her lower body, once withered and useless even with the mobility platform, was being rebuilt cell by cell as the Vescary technology interpreted and executed its final protocol. "The adaptive restoration matrix," Ilora whispered in awe as they watched through the viewport. The legends were true, Vescary technology could heal at the molecular level. It took 3 days for the process to complete. 3 days during which Maddox refused to leave the docking bay, watching through observation ports as the woman he had come to love was remade. 3 days during which the disabled Void Corp vessels remained powerless, their cybernetic crews trapped in endless reboot cycles by the Vescary countermeasures. When the outpost finally released her, the Lessa stepped onto the deck of the Wayfinder on legs of her own. Not mechanical, not artificial, but regrown from her original genetic template, enhanced with living metal that flowed beneath her scaled skin like quicksilver. Maddox caught her as she stumbled, unused to her new body. "You stubborn, brilliant woman," he murmured against her crest. "You planned this all along." "Not planned," she corrected, her vertical mouth forming a true smile for the first time. "Hoped. Vescary restoration protocol was theoretical, needed full outpost systems, direct genetic interface." She touched her legs with wonder. 3 centuries of crawling, now I stand." In the command center, they gathered to decide their next move. The Void Corp vessels remained disabled but would eventually recover. The outpost, having completed its final protocol, was beginning to power down, its purpose fulfilled. "We should contact the Frontier Alliance," Cora suggested. "They'd give anything for this level of Vescary technology." "No," the Lessa said firmly, Ilari cradled against her chest. "Vescary knowledge is not weapon to be wielded, it is legacy to be protected." She interfaced with the outpost one last time, downloading coordinates into the Wayfinder's navigation system. "There is another place, hidden world where Vescary plan to retreat, sanctuary prepared but never reached." Maddox studied the coordinates. "That's beyond the frontier, way beyond. No human has mapped that sector." "Good," the Lessa said simply. "We will be first." "We?" Maddox asked, hope coloring his voice. The Lessa's newly regenerated hand found his, 7 fingers intertwining with 5 in what had become their personal symbol of connection. "For centuries, I was last of my kind, keeper of memories. Now with Ilari, I can be beginning of something new." Her free hand gestured to include the ship and its crew, not just Vescary, not just human, something better. Maddox looked around at his crew, at Cora's reluctant curiosity, Ilora's scientific excitement, and at the infant Vescary who represented a future none of them had imagined possible. "A new colony," he said, the idea taking shape. "A place where knowledge is protected, not weaponized." "Yes," the Lessa agreed, "but first," she nodded toward the disabled Void Corp vessels. We must ensure they cannot follow, cannot ever use what little they have learned of Vescary secrets. Together, they formulated a plan. Using the last of the outpost's energy, they created a localized spatial anomaly, a fold in spacetime that would take centuries to stabilize. The Void Corp vessels, when they eventually reactivated, would find themselves trapped in a pocket dimension, unable to pursue or communicate with their collective. As the Wayfinder prepared to jump to hyperspace, heading toward uncharted territory and the promise of a new beginning, Maddox found the Lessa in the observatory deck, showing Ilari the stars. She will never know crawling through desert, the Lessa said softly, never know centuries of hiding. No, Maddox agreed, wrapping his arms around them both from behind. She'll know only building, growing, creating. She'll know what it means to stand tall from the beginning. The Lessa turned in his embrace, her newly regenerated body moving with a grace that still seemed miraculous. 300 years I lived in past, she said, touching his face in the gesture that had become so meaningful between them. Now, for first time, I look to future. Our future, Maddox corrected, pulling her closer. As the Wayfinder jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the last remnants of an ancient civilization and the hunters who had nearly destroyed it, the Lessa felt something she had thought lost forever, hope, bright and pure as the stars themselves. In her arms, Ilari trilled softly, reaching up with tiny seven-fingered hands toward the viewport where streaks of light marked their passage toward a new home, a new beginning. What had begun with a paraplegic alien woman crawling through desert sands would end with the founding of something unprecedented. A colony where human ingenuity and Vescary knowledge would create wonders neither species could have achieved alone. And at its heart, a love that had defied time, space, and the very boundaries of species. A love born of compassion, forged in adversity, and destined to change the face of the galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as weapons, but as builders of a future where no one would ever have to crawl through the desert alone again.